On the green fence. On the green fence.
Technology. It's always watching us, studying our every move.
Man made us better at what we do than was ever humanly possible.
Science will create a new order of artificial being.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
One day the AIs are going to look back on us the same way we look at fossils.
The idea that machines and computers could one day become so intelligent that they could outsmart humans is a compelling one. For decades, it's captured the imagination of Hollywood and science fiction writers. And no wonder, these futuristic scenarios are fascinating because they raise all sorts of questions about what it means to be human, and they reflect our fears about the perils of rapid technological advances. Welcome to On the Green Fence. I'm Neil King, and this is part 3 of our mini-series on artificial intelligence. So far, we've looked at how AI is helping us confront massive threats, such as climate change and biodiversity loss. We've also heard about how AI can accelerate activities that contribute to global warming, and if left unchecked, can add to environmental problems like drought, pollution, and e-waste. Today, we're taking a leap into the unknown, so buckle up. Artificial intelligence is improving and growing at a rapid pace, and if it continues to do so, what will that mean for us? In March, OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, released a new, much more powerful language model, GPT-4. Some computer scientists and people from the tech industry have raised concerns that things are moving too fast as companies compete in an AI race. They've called for a pause in the development of AI systems that are more powerful than the fourth GPT iteration to allow for the risks to be properly assessed first. To make sure that AI systems with human competitive intelligence are accurate, safe, trustworthy, and loyal. And one of their main concerns is the possibility that these systems could be used to spread disinformation or be deployed by criminals, for example. Some, such as billionaire Elon Musk, have also raised fears that machines could eventually become so intelligent that they'll pose an existential risk to us. To be clear, the AI that exists today that we've been talking about on this podcast are software carrying out specific tasks they've been programmed to do, using the data they've been fed. They might be able to carry out these tasks faster and better than a human, but they're not more intelligent than humans. They cannot think independently either. But some in the tech industry believe that if AI continues along its current trajectory, it may someday result in artificial general intelligence, AI that is as smart as humans, or even artificial superintelligence, systems that surpass human intelligence. Others dismiss this kind of talk as science fiction fantasy.
Hello.
Hello, Professor Bostrom.
Hey.
Hi, here's Neil King from Deutsche Welle in Bonn, Germany.
Good to make your virtual acquaintance.
To help unpack some of the questions around AI and its potential future, I got in touch with Professor Nick Bostrom. He's a Swedish-born philosopher at Oxford University, where his focus is on artificial intelligence, future technology, ethics, and philosophy. He is also the founding director of the Future of Humanity Institute and the author of the book Superintelligence: Paths, Dangers, Strategies. And first, I wanted to get his take on the rapid changes we're seeing in AI's development.
I've been very impressed by the pace of progress in AI recently. I think for the past 9 or 10 years, the whole deep learning revolution has really changed what AI is. It started to work in a way that it didn't used to in the olden days. Before the deep learning revolution, most AI was very specialized systems, handcrafted by human programmers to do one specific task. Mm-hmm. And with these neural network models, what we have are systems that are much better able to recognize patterns and to learn, and you train them rather than program them. And initially, this started working in limited domains like image recognition. And more recently, with the large language models, we find that big transformer-based deep neural networks can do a very wide range of different tasks. It seems to have a kind of general intelligence that can be applied to pretty much anything. I think we will see accelerating progress from this point on. It looks like, at least so far, when you keep scaling up these large transformer models, they just gain in capability. So you make the model larger, you give it more training data, and it becomes more capable. And it doesn't look like we have yet hit the limit on that.
Is this something that you're excited about, Nick? I mean, do you get a thrill seeing what is possible and how far this can go?
Yes, but both excited and scared at the same time. I think it will be a wild ride. I wrote this book back, it was published in 2014, but I was working on it for long before then, which outlined some potential risks, including existential risks that I've argued will arise when we really solve the problem of how to make computers generally intelligent. And in particular, when we develop superintelligence, artificial intelligence that exceeds human intelligence, not just in one narrow domain, but that has a higher capacity for general learning and reasoning and planning and so forth than we humans have. And I argue that there would be significant existential risks associated with that. At the same time, however, I also am really excited about the potential for this technology to be used for a whole host of really beneficial uses. So I'm kind of ambivalent about it, but not indifferent to it. But I think both the upside and the downside is very large.
I'm sort of wondering, Nick, looking at how we as a species have developed, and also if we look at the development of AI, how this is going forward, and something that we are also pushing. I mean, do you see this as a natural progression or evolution of us as a species? Is this the next step, getting this AI off the ground?
I think it is the next step. Now, whether you want to call it natural or not, I mean, it in some sense is kind of by definition unnatural. It's like artificial is in the very name. It's something that we are building and constructing. Nevertheless, it does seem like this is an extremely general purpose technology, and there are very strong drivers that push towards advances in AI. When on the one hand, it's like a fascinating scientific frontier to develop machines that can analyze information and understand information, and it helps us understand the brain. And on the other hand, increasingly, it has very strong commercial drivers. All the big tech companies are investing heavily in AI technology because it's the key to remaining competitive. Unfortunately, also, I expect over time there will be increasingly strong strategic drivers where countries might see being at the forefront of AI as a necessity for national security and international influence. It's kind of almost overdetermined that there will be strong forces and big investments going into pushing the frontier of machine intelligence.
I mean, I'm also wondering for us, I mean, you mentioned neurons, also the way our brain works, right? Because over time, our brain has grown, our brain power has grown. We've never known so much as we know right now in this time of history, right? What implications could this have for the way our brains solve problems and make decisions? If we make more use of AI, give it more responsibility, I mean, could this end up making us lazy or incapable of innovation and creativity ourselves? A bit like, developing cars that we can't fix ourselves anymore because we've become inept.
Yeah. I mean, I think like historically, as technology has automated one thing, we've instead invested our attention in something else. And so there are things like a modern office worker might not be able to do that any old farmer was able to do for hundreds of years, like milk a cow. Like I've never milked a cow. I don't know how to do that. But then I know how to do some other things, like play some computer game or something. So like it's not clear that the overall amount that we are able to do has changed, but it's just kind of allocated to different areas. So for a couple of 100 years, the modern economy has placed a great premium on a kind of verbal analytical skills, like we are sort of paper shuffling animals that need to add up numbers or make documents or follow explicit rules. And that has shaped the whole modern education system is a kind of factory for producing workers who are able to work in that kind of environment. Mm-hmm. If the economy changes so that a lot of these white collar tasks can be done by computer in some number of years, then one of the implications is that maybe we need to think about how we educate people going all the way down to school. Like the idea that you spend, I mean, in some cases, 12, 15 years, right, sitting behind a desk, solving sort of textbook problems. That might not be the best way to prepare new people for this modern world. That's something that will at some point need to change. I think ultimately, if the machine intelligence transition fully unfolds, you could consider the limiting case where all human labor becomes automatable, right? It's like you can argue how long it will take to get there, but sometimes from a philosophical point of view, it's interesting to consider the extreme limiting case and then sort of working backward from there. So to the extent that the long-term future is one where machines can do everything better than we can do, then what would remain for us humans to do? And I think amongst other things, you might change the education system to prioritize learning how to enjoy life, to have meaningful leisure, to appreciate beauty in all its forms, whether it's in nature or in art, hobbies, the art of conversation, friendship, enjoying great meals. Like there's just a vast space of activities you could use to fill your life with. Right now, so much of our mentality is shaped by this need that you need to become a breadwinner, you need to become productive, you need to make a living, you need to get a job and get promoted. And all of that ultimately might have to be rethought in this world where AI truly succeeds.
Hey ChatGPT, will AI become more intelligent than humans? And if so, when?
The question of whether or not AI will become more intelligent than humans is a subject of much debate in the field of artificial intelligence. While AI systems are already capable of outperforming humans in specific tasks, such as playing chess or Go, they still lack the general intelligence and adaptability of human beings. It is difficult to predict exactly when AI will surpass human intelligence, as there are many factors involved, including advances in hardware and software, as well as breakthroughs in the field of AI research. Some experts predict that it could happen within the next few decades, while others believe that it may take much longer, if it happens at all. It is important to note that even if AI does surpass human intelligence, it does not necessarily mean that AI will become more powerful than humans in every area. Human intelligence has many unique qualities, such as creativity, empathy, and intuition, that may prove difficult for AI to replicate. Additionally, it is up to humans to determine how AI is developed and used, so it is important for society to consider the ethical implications of creating highly intelligent AI systems.
It seems like even if critics, raise certain points where AI could be a real problem, or it could also be an existential threat if it develops in a certain direction and we lose control of it. I mean, there are certain fears attached to it. But despite all that, it seems like, looking at how things are shaping, that this is happening so fast, and this is going to happen no matter what the critics say, right? AI is coming. It seems like it's inevitable. Is it inevitable, this AI revolution?
Inevitable is a strong word. I mean, it certainly looks right now, if the forces driving advances are very strong and very diverse. And it's also internationally, of course, something that can happen and is happening all over the world. And right now, it might be some US tech companies is at the lead, but there are Chinese players and Indian players and others that are not far behind. So it's not completely inconceivable that there could be something that would, like from cataclysmic things, like some great global thermonuclear war or some other biotech war disaster that sort of destroy civilization first. That's a possibility. Or you could even imagine some scenario where maybe humanity would come together in some way to ban progress in AI. That doesn't really seem to be in the cards currently, but
that would be my next question, because the point, if we came at a point where we sort of realized, okay, this is a great tool, but maybe we need to tread carefully now because it's turning into something which we might have to attach values to or give it a certain direction. Which point would you say would we need to stop advancing AI? How far is too far?
Well, I think we might want to distinguish how far we ultimately want to go from the question of how quickly do we want to go there. I think the ideal scenario from my point of view is that we ultimately do go all the way with this and realize the full potential of machine intelligence. I think that is a kind of portal through which humanity ultimately will need to passage and should passage. However, I think also that it could be very valuable at some point in the critical phases of the developments for the leading developers to be able to pause for a short period of time to, for example, spend some extra effort to work out safety problems. Like if you were at the brink of developing human level or superintelligence, it would be nice if you could say, pause for a few months or a year to really double check and triple check everything and roll it out in degrees, rather than being in an extremely competitive situation where there are like 10 different developers in different countries that are all breathing down each other's neck. And if you're leading that race and you decide unilaterally to be responsible and to pause, it just means somebody else swoops right past you and the race goes to the least cautious, the one with the fewest scruples. That kind of dynamic would seem to increase the risks. So if there are things we can do to slightly increase cooperation and understanding and sort of mitigate the intensity of the racing dynamic, that I think might help reduce some of the risks we see. The other thing we could do, aside from changing the pace of AI development, is to try to speed up the other processes in society that helps us deal with this. So if we invested more in thinking through the consequences in developing the governance capabilities ultimately to regulate this, if we started having some of the ethical conversations now that will become practically important in the coming years, there is no reason we have to wait for the AI development actually to occur before we can start to think through what we want from this and the ethical questions involved. And of course, doing this technical work on finding scalable methods for AI alignment so that we actually at the technical level know how to get the AIs to do what we want. All of those things are ones that we can start doing now, and I think, in fact, are overdue. I've been arguing for a great many years that we should focus a lot more on AI safety and on thinking about the ethics. And there is more investment in that now, but that's like the alternative. In addition to, like, instead of slowing down the AI development, we could try to speed up our processes for attaining wisdom and insight and understanding into how to deal with it and manage it.
Hey, ChatGPT, what happens when AI becomes more intelligent than humans?
If and when AI becomes more intelligent than humans, it could have a significant impact on society and the world as we know it. Here are some potential scenarios that could unfold. Some experts believe that as AI becomes more intelligent, it may eventually reach a level of intelligence that surpasses that of humans in every domain. This is known as superintelligence, and it could have far-reaching implications for society, including the potential for rapid technological progress, the ability to solve some of the world's most pressing problems, and the possibility of creating new forms of life or intelligence. While many experts are optimistic about the potential of AI, others warn that it could pose a threat to humanity if it becomes too powerful or if it is developed without sufficient safeguards in place. This could manifest in various ways, such as AI systems becoming uncontrollable or behaving in ways that are harmful to humans. Another possibility is that AI and humans continue to coexist, with AI systems augmenting human intelligence and abilities rather than replacing them. This could lead to a new era of collaboration between humans and machines, with AI contributing to human progress and well-being in a variety of ways. Ultimately, what happens when AI becomes more intelligent than humans will depend on how it is developed and used, as well as the decisions made by policymakers, researchers, and society as a whole. It is up to us to ensure that AI is developed in a responsible and ethical way that maximizes its potential benefits while minimizing its risks.
That was my colleague Natalie Muller's cloned AI voice, giving the answer provided by ChatGPT. Bearing in mind then the risks associated with AI, if it turns out to be smarter than humans, I mean, what do we need to do to set these boundaries? What has to happen?
Well, I think there are sort of three broad areas of challenge. One is a technical problem, which is how to align increasingly powerful and creative AI systems with human intentions, so that from a technical point of view, the AI does what the builder of the AI intends for it to do, as opposed to sort of going amok or doing random other things. So that's something that requires really clever researchers to figure out how to solve that. Then there is a political problem or governance problem, which is that as AI becomes increasingly powerful tools, many actors will want to use it for a whole range of different purposes, some of which might be harmful. And so as a society, we need to figure out ways to try to achieve more cooperation and to decide what uses are legitimate and what should be prohibited. I don't see any easy solution there. That's just something that will require a broad engagement by society to start to think through these things. And then I think there is also a third area of challenge, which has so far received a lot less attention, but will, I believe, become increasingly important. And this has to do with questions as to what we do to the AI systems themselves. So far, I think they've been tools, and the question doesn't really arise for a hammer or like a screwdriver. But if we are building digital minds that are becoming increasingly sophisticated, maybe initially sort of animal level minds and then human-like minds, perhaps, or minds that are different from humans in many ways, but plausibly could have moral status, then it also starts to matter potentially a lot how we treat them. They might become subjects of moral concern. And it might be wrong, for example, to develop human-level AI systems and then to mistreat them in various ways. And that will be a very difficult and challenging area to handle well.
That sounds almost like the way you describe it, that we could even create a new form of slavery in essence.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that would be horrible, given how easily it is for humans to mistreat other humans and non-human animals, and there's a very sad history of that and happening in today's world as well. And then you think a digital mind might be even harder for human empathy to reach out to, because it might not even have a face. It might not have the ability to squeak, right? It might be an invisible process running inside a computer chip in a big server farm. And so that will really stretch our ability to expand our circle of empathy. But I think it's going to become very important. And maybe the first place where it really will start to hit people in a visceral way are when people start interacting with these chatbots. And we've seen it a little bit with ChatGPT, and it's gonna, as these bots become more sophisticated and people are having social interactions with them, maybe they have an assistant that's fine-tuned and knows a lot about stuff about them. It remembers past conversations. Maybe it helps them write better emails and stuff. And when you interact with an AI system at that more personal level, and it will be very hard to avoid, even from a psychological point of view, to start thinking about how you should be treating it. So the potential ways for that to go wrong are very many and very grave. At the same time, we should also recognize that there can be big differences between AIs and, say, humans. And so that what it would be appropriate for us to do or not to do to a human might be very different from what it would be appropriate for us to do to an AI, even a smart AI. And an AI might not have the same needs as a human. It might have different needs. So something that it would be horrible to do to a human being, like, might be perfectly fine to a certain kind of AI that was designed from the ground up to really want that and to be fulfilled in that situation.
This being an environment podcast, we really wanted also to get your thoughts on this, that, AI is being used to distill vast amounts of data for different purposes, including to make predictions about the climate. Are data-driven conclusions produced by an AI more persuasive than conclusions drawn by scientists for us?
Well, I don't know whether they would be. I mean, there was this, I think the time has passed now, but there was a time maybe in the early 2000s where neuroscience had this property that if you attached a picture of a brain scan to any news article, it suddenly became more credible. People took it more seriously, even if the brain scan had no relevance or relation to the claims made in the article. I don't know whether we have reached that stage with AI. I think AI tools certainly could be very useful for environmental scientists in many particular ways to model particular phenomena as a kind of scientific tool amongst many other tools. But of course, it's always important when using like a simulation or a tool to know its limitations as well as its uses. Also, you can imagine AI technology to be improved, for example, in chemistry or organic chemistry, maybe to develop new materials for better solar panels or to find better ways to filter out pollutants from various emitters. I think that will be a broad range of uses, but one shouldn't think just because somebody attaches sort of the buzzword AI to whatever they are doing, that suddenly catapults it into a much higher level of credibility.
Right. I mean, if we look at, for instance, if we were to use AI to help us solve the problem that we have with the climate crisis, I mean, for instance, if we were to throw it at AI or rather AGI, how would it reconcile the problem that people are in fact the problem, are the reason behind the climate crisis? Would that possibly make it turn against us?
I don't think that's why it would turn against us if it did turn against us. There is no particular reason to think that if we failed to solve the alignment problem, what you would end up with would be an AI environmentalist as opposed to something else. But I think that if the alignment problem is solved and if we get a sufficiently adequate solution to the governance and cooperation problem, the political problem that I talked about before, then certainly AI technology could be a very powerful tool for us humans to use to address various climate issues. I'm thinking in particular of the AI as something that could help us make technological advances in various areas relevant to climate, like clean energy and so forth. And also things that maybe are less sexy, but also could make a contribution, like more efficiently managing the power grid or running various production systems in ways that are more energy efficient. There is also the flip side that like some of these AI systems consume a lot of energy. And so if AI becomes an increasingly large part of the economy, then energy demand might increase just to sort of power these data centers that are running the AIs. But I think the first order approximation, maybe one can think of AI as a sort of general purpose technology that can be used for so many different applications that it's hard to single out one particular way that it will impact the environment. And a lot of that will depend on the decisions we humans make.
I mean, you just mentioned the power supply and that it also is very power hungry. I assume that will also stay the same. It'll actually grow, right? That AI will be heavily reliant on also a steady power supply in the future. I mean, what happens if AI realizes that power is a prerequisite to its own existence? I'm sort of wondering whether environmental or climate concerns could take a back seat then, because I guess, AI would probably compute that steady power supply is most likely to get from nuclear energy or coal plants right now, rather than from renewables. I guess my question is, do we need to ensure that AI bases its decisions on sustainability in future? And how would we do that?
Well, I think it might be more a matter of ensuring that companies that run AIs and governments that put regulations in place for what these companies are allowed to do. I think the focus would more be on them to prioritize sustainability goals and avoid pollution. At least as of now, that's kind of where the lever is. The AIs themselves don't make a decision about which particular power source they use, right? It's just a big electricity cable going into the data center. And
Okay, so you don't see AI developing into something that at some point will start to develop kind of a consciousness and will actually look out for the things that it needs, i.e. a safe power supply.
Yeah, that could potentially happen in the long run, but in that scenario, I think the environmental problems are just like that's kind of almost the smallest problem. In that scenario, we would have like an immediate concern for our own survival. In that an AI that had the power to sort of manipulate energy policy, let us say, would have presumably the power to do pretty much anything it wanted. And in that situation, you really want to make sure you have solved the alignment problem, because then you're not dealing with a simple tool anymore. You're dealing with potentially something that is more influential and powerful than we humans are. Yeah. You need to make sure that thing is then on our side.
That's the thing, isn't it, Nick? That in a sense, it's a bit of a gamble, right? Because we haven't got an off button to this, have we? It's not like, it's like with the internet, right? It's not that we can just switch it off if it starts doing things that we don't like.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, today we still have, but then there's like another layer of this, right? So even if one AI developer, obviously that can switch off their AI if they want to, but then that just means somebody else takes that market from them, right? And in the future, then, I think ultimately, if we're talking about machine superintelligence, then we should not rely on the idea that we would keep it safe by having an off switch button. Because once you have a superintelligence, it could figure out ways to get around that by persuading us not to flip the off switch button, or disabling the off switch button, or creating backups of itself in other places. Or there are like any number of ways, if you are a superintelligence, that you could easily sort of circumvent those mechanical safeguards that we humans might devise. And at that point, you really need to, I think, work more on ensuring that the AI's objective functions are ones that are consistent with human values, so that it's not this alien superintelligent force that is scheming for its own purposes to get around human controls. I think that will, in the long run, be a losing game for humanity. But rather, you want to make sure that you build an ally, is something that is a kind of an extension of human intention and human values that help us better achieve the goals we have, and to reflect on what we want, and that maybe interactively we can use to iterate our own decision making, right, in ways that I think should take the potential interest of digital minds into account. But the point still holds that you want to be very deliberate and careful in what goals these AI systems have, particularly in this future scenario where they eventually attain general forms of superintelligence.
If we just take a step back, Nick, and compare AI to the evolution of the natural world, because it seems to me that it's developing, or AI is developing super fast compared to evolution in the natural world. I mean, how dangerous is this discrepancy? The fact that AI seems to be in the fast lane, and biologically, we and all other life on this planet are sort of stuck in a 30 zone right now. Is that something we need to worry about?
Well, I think that it has long been the case that biological evolution has been extremely slow relative to human processes. So for at least the last 10,000 years, the action has really been in human culture rather than in human biological evolution. We are not that different from our ancestors from 10 or 20,000 years ago. There's been some very minor things, like lactose tolerance gene has spread, and there are like some other, but these are very, very marginal compared to the enormous changes that have happened in human culture, human institutions, science, like all kinds of ways that we think very, very differently now. We educate our kids differently. We have the external technology we're interacting. So biological evolution has kind of long been a sideshow, with the exception of viruses and antimicrobial existence, where the generation times are so short. Like, right, if you have something that lives and dies within a few minutes, you can get a lot of generations. Even in 1 year, but for humans that has been slow. I'm more concerned about the potential of a speed mismatch arising between human processes of deliberation and decision making and AI development and decision making times. I think we are already seeing that to some extent now. Just over the last year, the pace from GPT-2 to GPT-3 to ChatGPT, and now it's GPT-4. For somebody like me, like whose job it is to sort of try to reflect deeply on what this means for humanity and what we should do, it's hard even to keep up, right? Like a philosopher needs to think slowly and deeply, but how can you do that if the thing you're supposed to think about changes every few weeks? So that goes back to the earlier point I was trying to make, that if there are ways we can do to speed up our own ability to reflect on these issues by paying more attention, giving more resources, and maybe as these AI advance, also using AI tools to improve our own reflection, I think that could be quite valuable for remaining in the loop for as long as possible as this machine intelligence revolution really takes off.
Nick, thank you for your time, and it was very interesting.
Cheers.
Take
Thanks.
care,
Bye-bye.
Nick. Bye. Okay, so a lot to chew on from that interview, and even more if you take our first 2 episodes on AI into account. Way too much for me to summarize now, but yeah, the bottom line for me is, if I were to put it in a nutshell, is that sooner or later we're going to reach a stage when we're going to have to draw up a very clear set of AI development boundaries that are internationally binding and that all can agree upon. And unfortunately, that's something that appears increasingly unlikely right now, given how the world powers are drifting further apart. Personally, I also feel that we are still underestimating just how big a shift is happening with AI right now, and what it will mean for how we make decisions and function as a society in future. But if we are going to rely on AI in future, not just as a powerful computation tool, but also to reach decisions on complex topics, it's all the more important to make sure that the boundaries we define for AI or AGI come with a big green fence all round. That's my 2 cents for now, but far more important is, what do you think about all this? How did you like our mini-series on AI? Do you have any questions or comments regarding AI and the environment? Please do let us know. Write us an email to onthegreenfence@dw.com, or also, by all means, feel free to send us a voice message to that same address. Many thanks to my colleague and producer Natalie Muller and my sound engineer Thomas Schmidt. And a big thank you to all our listeners for sharing, reviewing and subscribing to On the Green Fence. My name is Neil King. Take it easy and take care.
On the green fence.